Hey everyone, it's Lawrence here from Mango Map. Great to see you again, and welcome to the next part of our remote working content series. Now, today I'm going to be talking about the top 3 lessons that you can learn from open source and apply to your remote workflows. Okay, so just to start off with, uh, let's define what open source is in case some of you aren't aware. Okay, so it's a software development model where the original source code is openly available and can be freely distributed or modified, worked on by anyone. Okay, so why is that important to remote working? Well, the elements of open source are as follows. It's worked on from people across the globe in different time zones, from their home office or from their bedroom. It therefore prioritizes collaboration, and as a result, it's produced the most effective remote workflows. So the key takeaway I really want to impart to you is open source has resulted in hugely complex software builds that have regularly beaten more traditional office-based workers working on commercial alternatives. So what do I mean by that? So Linux, for example, it's the most popular open source operating system, the best known. Now, Linux, the Linux kernel powers Google's Android operating system. So if you have an Android phone, like hundreds of millions of people do, then you are benefiting from open source, okay? WordPress is an open source content management system, one of the most popular in existence, powering 60 million websites, around 30 to 40% of blogs run on WordPress, around 25 to 30% of all websites. So as you can see, it's a hugely popular piece of software, and that was open source, okay? Wikipedia is probably the most famous example. Now, Wikipedia is open source software, but it's also applied that open source model to article contribution. So back in the 90s, there were two big projects going for the dominant position as the dominant encyclopedia. Now, one was Microsoft's Encarta. Now, they used a traditional workflow of hiring writers and software developers and a large project team and spending a lot of money. And then there was Wikipedia, which was the open source alternative, which everyone was like, how is that going to work? People have to spend their own time and they're not going to get paid. And well, obviously history has proven that the open source model was obviously far superior in that case. Okay, so as we've seen, it's a very successful way to work. It's produced hugely complex pieces of software, hugely successful. Okay, so what are the 3 key lessons for remote working that we can take? So number 1 is intrinsic motivation. Okay, no one's getting paid to work on open source. It's more about the intrinsic motivation that it offers. Okay, it's out in the open, so anyone can contribute. So it takes it away from that very structured, siloed environment in the office, and anyone can work on it as long as they have the skills. But there are checks and balances on that, of course. And number 3, occasional high-value meetings. Okay, so let's dig deeper into each one of those. So the first one, intrinsic motivation, is working on open source software. Traditionally, has been a labor of love. It's not been about money. It's been something that a web developer is passionate about, and they want to join with other like-minded people and work on a project towards a common goal. Okay. So if you are currently working remotely and you're finding some of your team are lagging or you're lagging or there's some issues with that, treat that, particularly lagging work in a remote setting, treat that as a red flag. And first of all, ask yourself, is the work properly defined? Now that's a very easy fix. I'm going to link to a video in the description about how you can fix that by employing our top 3 remote working tools. It might just be it's not very well defined and you need something like Trello just to track a workflow and to write everything down so everyone knows what's happening. If you've done that and it's still lagging, then you really have to ask yourself, is the work meaningful enough? Or is it just a hangover from 5 years ago when some procedure was put in place that's now outdated? If that's the case, then if it's not meaningful to the worker, then is it really meaningful to the organization? So as you can see, that intrinsic motivation element, it can be a huge driver of productivity, and it can also provide a red flag for you to find out if the work you're actually doing is valuable or not. Okay. So number 2, out in the open. So anyone who wants to help is able to, as long as they have the skills, and it's open to everybody. So Traditionally, in office-based settings, there are a lot of silos, a lot of teams working on little things, and it's very hard to get, to drive collaboration between them. So the key takeaway from this is as far as possible, move away from silos and move towards a more collaborative framework. And that should be about everything that you do. So if you have a team and you're tracking each of their individual workflows, make sure you have a centralized location where everything is written down and everyone can see what everyone else is doing. It becomes more collaborative. People can have a look, provide ideas, and it also enforces that teamwork ethic. Okay, even though you're spread out, you could be spread out across the country, the continent, or even the globe. Okay, so very important. Now, this is a particular bugbear of mine. I think everyone has been in meetings before where it's boring and it's low value and you don't need to be there. You're just there as a seat. Okay, so what can we take from open source? Now, a lot of open source projects become so big and so successful using this remote working model that they have conferences or meetups where people who are working on it in their home office can come together and talk about the project that they've been spending so much of their time on for free. Okay, so there's obviously a passion there. So if you have a passionate workforce that are highly engaged towards a common goal and you're all building together, then the occasional high value meeting that you have will just be great for everybody because you can talk, you'll be engaged, you'll be interested, and it won't be about just showing up and sitting there bored and having daily meetings. It just gets too much. Just use this opportunity of remote working to move away from that towards a more occasional meetup where you prioritize high value, okay, and engagement. So let's wrap up. The open source model is the most successful remote working example there is, and it has regularly produced work that has crushed its commercial rivals. Okay, that's not in doubt. So the three key lessons as a remote work team now, the three key lessons that we can take for that are intrinsic motivation. Is the work meaningful? Okay, is it properly defined? Is everything out in the open so everyone can contribute, or is it siloed and people feeling very alone and not understanding how their part of the work contributes to the whole? Okay. Number three, occasional meetings can offer extreme value and engagement and just keep people on track because they can go away, do something that's highly meaningful to them, something that's highly valuable, produce work, and then come together like once a week, once a fortnight, once a month even, and they can report what they've been doing, hear what everyone else has been doing, and they can see the whole as opposed to just being siloed. Okay, so I hope that was interesting. I hope there's some value in there for you. If you are enjoying these remote working videos, please consider subscribing or leaving a comment. We're producing these videos as much as a conversation as it is an instruction. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I will speak to you soon. Thank you.